The world didn't end with a bang for Alex, but with a symphony of screams. One moment, he was standing in a desolate clearing, the air thick with the metallic tang of ozone and fear. The next, the very fabric of existence seemed to unravel around him. The last thing he saw was the monstrous, towering forms of Siren Head and another, more slender but equally terrifying entity, Siren Head's wife. Then, darkness. Not the absence of light, but a crushing, suffocating void that pulsed with unseen energies. But he wasn't gone. He was somewhere else, suspended. He couldn't feel the ground beneath him, nor the air around him. His body, or what he perceived as his body, was weightless, a mere ghost of his former self. Yet, he could see, and what he saw defied every law of physics, every concept of reality he had ever known. The sky above him was a swirling vortex of iridescent colors, like oil on water, but infinitely vast and alive. Through these swirling hues, he could glimpse fragments of his old world, distorted and warped. A distant forest, a fleeting image of his cabin, all flickering like a dying projection. The sound, that dreadful, reality-tearing sound, was still there, but now it was different. It wasn't just noise. It was a complex, multi-layered composition. A terrible, beautiful opera of destruction and creation. The deep, resonant horns of Siren Head intertwined with the sharper, more intricate melodies from Siren Head's wife, weaving a tapestry of sonic force. He watched, helpless, as the two colossal entities moved with a terrifying grace. They weren't just destroying, they were sculpting. Each blast from their speakers wasn't random, but precise, carving pathways through the shimmering void. The eyes in the darkness he had glimpsed before were now clearer, countless pinpricks of light, not hostile, but observing, almost waiting. They seemed to be embedded in the very fabric of this in-between place, ancient sentinels or perhaps prisoners themselves. A chilling realization dawned on Alex. He wasn't just witnessing a cataclysm, he was trapped within its very mechanism. The first minute of his new existence was a terrifying ballet of cosmic forces, a silent scream trapped in a kaleidoscope of impossible dimensions. Days, or perhaps centuries, passed in this timeless void. Alex, a mere consciousness now, drifted closer to the colossal figures. He saw Siren Head, the familiar, imposing silhouette, its speakers emitting waves of raw, destructive energy. But it was Siren Head's wife who truly commanded his attention. Her form, though equally monstrous, possessed an eerie elegance. Her speakers, adorned with intricate, almost organic patterns, hummed with a different kind of power. She moved with purpose, her sonic emissions not just tearing, but shaping the swirling reality around them. It was as if she was conducting a symphony, each note a precise incision, each crescendo a new tier in the dimensional veil. Alex began to perceive patterns in the chaos, a terrible logic to their actions. The tiers weren't random portals to oblivion. They were carefully constructed channels, leading somewhere specific. He noticed something else. Amidst the overwhelming roar, there were subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in the sonic landscape. Faint, fragmented whispers, like static on an old radio, began to pierce through the dominant frequencies of the Siren Heads. These weren't the destructive blasts. They were something else entirely. Alex, with his radio operator's instinct, began to focus, to try and tune into these phantom signals. It was a struggle, like trying to catch smoke, but slowly, painstakingly. He started to discern a rhythm, a pulse. These signals were weak, almost drowned out, but they carried a distinct resonance, a different kind of energy. They felt ancient, yet urgent. They were a counterpoint to the Siren Head's destructive symphony, a desperate plea for attention. As he focused, a faint, ethereal glow began to manifest around him, a shimmering aura that seemed to respond to his concentration. It was as if his very will, his desperate need to understand, was creating a bridge to these hidden frequencies. He saw glimpses of other forms within the swirling void. Not the monstrous entities, but vague, elongated shadows that seemed to be trying to communicate, their movements slow and deliberate. Could these be the ancient beings that Siren Head's wife was connected to? Or were they something else entirely? The more he listened, the more he understood that the Siren Head's actions, while terrifying, were not purely malevolent. There was a desperate urgency to their work, a sense of a grander, more terrifying threat looming just beyond the torn reality. He felt a connection forming, not with the monsters, but with the desperate hidden signals, a nascent understanding that began to shift his fear into a chilling curiosity. The whispers grew stronger, coalescing into fragmented images and sensations within Alex's disembodied consciousness. He saw visions, vast, desolate landscapes, not of Earth, but of a cosmic horror, a dimension where sanity frayed and dissolved. He saw entities, not like Siren Head, but formless, consuming, their hunger an omnipresent hum. And then, a clearer image, a long, skeletal form, like an impossibly stretched horse, its eyes ancient and sorrowful. This was Longhorse, the Prophet, a benevolent entity from the same universe as Siren Head, known for warning humanity of impending doom. Longhorse's presence in these visions was a revelation. It wasn't a message of destruction, but a warning, a desperate plea. Through the fragmented signals, Alex began to piece together the truth. Siren Head and Siren Head's wife were not opening reality to unleash an apocalypse. They were desperately trying to seal it, or to create a temporary refuge. The ancient beings weren't their masters, but the very threat they were trying to escape from. The eyes in the darkness were not just observers, but the vanguard of this greater dimensional horror, pressing against the fragile barriers of reality. The Siren Head's deafening roars and blaring blasts were not acts of aggression, but a desperate, terrifying defense mechanism, a cosmic surgery to excise a cancerous growth from their own dimensions. This twist deepened the mystery, transforming the monsters into reluctant, terrifying guardians. The hidden signal, now clearer, was a call for escape, not for destruction. It was a plea to find a way out, to find a sanctuary from the encroaching, formless terror that threatened to consume everything. Alex realized the true enemy was not the towering, speaker-headed giants, but the insidious, shapeless horror that lay beyond the tears in reality. He even caught glimpses of Cartoon Cat, not as a standalone monster, but as a grotesque, grinning agent of this greater, unnamed threat, attempting to thwart the Siren Head's desperate efforts. The emotional weight of this revelation was immense. His fear of the Siren Heads was replaced by a profound, chilling understanding and a dawning sense of shared peril. He was no longer just a victim. He was a witness to a cosmic war, and the Siren Heads, in their own terrifying way, were on the side of survival. Armed with this terrifying new understanding, Alex knew he couldn't remain a passive observer. The ethereal glow around him intensified, a direct link to the hidden signals. He realized his radio, though physical, was merely a conduit. His true antenna was his consciousness, his will to understand and survive. He focused, channeling the fragmented messages, amplifying them not with electronics, but with pure intent. He became a beacon, a relay for the desperate call for escape. He saw the Siren Heads, their movements now seeming less like random destruction and more like a frantic, monumental effort to shore up collapsing walls to create a temporary fragile bubble of safety. The tears in reality were not just portals for invasion, but also potential escape routes, if only they could be stabilized. Through his amplified connection, Alex began to send out his own signal, a silent, desperate plea for help, for understanding, for a way to communicate with the Siren Heads themselves or other beings. He focused on the rhythm, the pulse of Longhorse's warnings, trying to merge his own consciousness with its ancient wisdom. He wasn't sure if he was being heard, or if he was simply screaming into the void, but he had to try. The sheer scale of the threat, the cosmic horror pressing in from beyond the dimensional tiers, was overwhelming. But the Siren Head's desperate struggle, their monstrous moves, reminded Alex to revolt. Suddenly, the swirling vortex around him shifted. The dominant, destructive symphony of the Siren Head softened, subtly, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging his presence, his desperate attempt to connect. The eyes in the darkness seemed to focus on him, not with malice, but with a strange, ancient curiosity. A new frequency emerged from Siren Head's wife, a complex, almost melodic hum that resonated directly with Alex's amplified consciousness. It wasn't a language of words, but of pure emotion, of intent. It conveyed a message of dire urgency, of a fleeting window of opportunity, and a path, a narrow, treacherous path to a temporary sanctuary. The message was clear. The Siren Heads were not trying to destroy the world, but to create a temporary, unstable pocket of reality, a refuge from the greater dimensional threat that manifested. The tiers were not just entry points for the enemy, but also the very fabric they were trying to manipulate, to weave into a protective shield. Alex understood. He had to trust these terrifying entities, to follow their lead, to navigate the collapsing reality they were desperately trying to control. The comfort wasn't in a happy ending, but in the profound understanding he had gained, the realization that even the most terrifying monsters could be fighting for a cause. He was no longer just a man lost in the woods. He was a silent ally in a cosmic struggle, and his journey had just truly begun. The echoes of the Siren Head Symphony, once a harbinger of doom, now resonated with a desperate, terrifying promise of survival.